Hello, BookTube. You may remember, some of you, the ones who pay too much attention to this channel, that my previous trip to the Brattle bookshop here in Boston was not entirely good. Usually I go to the Brattle often, and I usually love it. It's 3 stories of used books, all reasonably priced, every subject under the sun, and also next door to the store, there's a lot, a parking lot, basically, a sale lot, with thousands more books for $1, $3, and $5, with no other organization than that, just organized by price. So that if you've got the time, and if it's a lovely day, my, what a fun way to spend an hour just looking at all of those books out in the sale lot. And knowing that, as I've said many times before, you're going to run out of carrying capacity, physical carrying capacity, before you're going to run out of money. That is, I mean, the inside of the shop, aside from the 3rd floor, which is collectible stuff, the inside of the shop isn't going to set you back a whole lot of money anyway, but the sale lot is dirt cheap. Usually that's enough to make me absolutely love the place, but the last time I went, there was an element involved that I hated, and I am just the type of mind frame to let that ruin my time. It need not have. It was not intruding on me at all, but either way, I came back from that last Brattle trip thinking that I really needed another Brattle trip sooner rather than later to get the stench out of my nostrils. So I broke one of my own rules and went to the Brattle on a Saturday. Today, I went this morning, and I got an egregious pile of books. Just a pile of books. It was almost like the sale lot was trying to compensate for the bad time that I had last time. And so I talked to everybody on the staff. I had a wonderful, wonderful visit. And I got a pile of books. And in this pile of books, there is a little theme. I don't know if you'll spot it, but I thought I would warn you. So, how are we going to do this? God, looking at this pile, once again, I just do not know how I got it back here. For those of you who've been asking, the canvas shoulder bag that I did a few Bag Tuesdays on is working like a charm. Like a charm. The only thing about it that I don't like is the fact that the grip of the shoulder strap just slides to the end of the metal buckle that it's attached to on the bag itself. It just slides to the end of that, which can't be good for the strength of that strap. But the bag itself works wonderfully. Well, let's start with mass market paperbacks. We start with those. So I got the great Terry Carr. Oh no, Robert Silverberg and Karen Haber did a series of science fiction anthologies indebted to the great Terry Carr. Science fiction short stories, the Universe series. Which I assume is, I don't actually know this for sure, but I assume that it's a tribute to an old anthology series that Terry Carr did, the great editor Terry Carr did. In addition to the year's best science fiction, he also did a series called Universe. And I found Universe 3 with space orcas there on the cover. And I actually checked when I saw this to see whether or not it was my own copy. I had this once upon a time. I had Universe 1, 2, 3, and 4, I think. But 3 I thought was exceptionally good. And I checked. This is not my copy. And this is the only other copy that I've ever seen. So I think I was within my rights to check. Then we have this. This is The Lonely Sea and the Sky by Sir Francis Chichester, the author of Gypsy Moth Sails the World. This is his autobiography. I've had this many, many times before. I would like to find an old hardcover of this with a dust jacket, but I'll take the paperback. The paperback is amazing. The story is amazing. Then we have some ace doubles. These are mass market paperbacks where you start reading your cheesy mystery story or your Western story or especially your science fiction story, and then you finish that story. It's only a novella. It's like 100-something pages long. And then you flip the book over. The same book. You flip the same book over and you get a different cover for a different story. And you just read that. I love ace doubles, and I found this one here. This is Meeting at Infinity by John Brunner. I have a lot of John Brunner. A lot in Ace Doubles and a lot that isn't. A lot that was reprinted from Ace Doubles later on when he made a name for himself. And when you flip it over, you get something by Kenneth Bulmer called Beyond the Silver Sky, where the title says they sought new worlds, but that's some sort of shark rider going on there. I don't really know. We'll have to see. You would carve up the skin of your thighs if you rode a shark like that. But I don't know that I even know this author. I know John Brunner quite well. Then we have another Ace Double. So we start with Edmund Hamilton of Captain Future fame. This is the Sun Smasher. And then when you're done reading the Sun Smasher, you flip the book over. So you're paying 35 cents. But you flip the book over, and then you have Starhaven by Ivar Jorgensen. It's these classic science fiction covers. Now, I don't know how these are going to work for June on the Range. Oh, no, June on the Range. I keep doing that. Rocket Summer. So this is 1958, for instance, the Jorgensen thing. And the Sun Smasher is 1959. So these will certainly work for Rocket Summer. Then Meeting at Infinity, John Brunner. This has got to be a little late. No, 1961. That will work. And Beyond the Silver Sky is 1961 as well. So these will work. And then the third Ace Double. We have Keith Woodcock. This is I Speak for Earth. Really good cover there. And what are you for a publication date? 1961. And then this other one is by Ray Cummings, and I could not pass it up. I don't think I know this author, unless that's a pen name, but I couldn't pass up this cover. This was a cover by one of two today. Wandle the Invader. I want to read this book. Unless I have a drastic change of heart sometime soon, this is Wandle the Invader. Maybe not the whole of the Ace Double, but Wandle the Invader is on the pile for tonight. Let's see. Okay, then I found a Penguin trade paperback of the Collected Stories of Catherine Mansfield. And I really like these silver Penguin trade paperbacks. I don't often see them, but I don't have. There was another trade paperback of Catherine Mansfield short stories. She's really good, and I had a trade paperback of her short stories for years and years. I don't, off the top of my head, remember what it looks like, but I'm pretty sure I don't have it. And I certainly don't have. I would want this, so I grabbed it. Then Silent in the Grave, the very first Lady Emily mystery. Deanna Raybourne's series of murder mysteries. These do not fit for Private Eye July because Lady Emily does not take pay for her investigative services. But this is the first book in the series. This is the book in which her husband dies. Let the wicked be ashamed, and let them be silent in the grave. These ominous words are the last threat that Sir Edward Grey receives from his killer. Before he can show them to Nicholas Brisbane, his private inquiry agent he has retained for his protection, he collapses and dies at his London home, in the presence of his wife, Julia, and a roomful of dinner guests. And that sets her on a path, not only to figure out what happened to him, but to figure out murders just in general. I love the Lady Emily series. I have followed it. There's one now. There's a brand new one now. I've followed it. I've reviewed a few of them. But I remember reading Silent in the Grave when it first came out and thinking, this was really good. I wonder if it has legs. 2007. So it was nice to have this trade. I don't know that I want them all, but to have the first book in the series. Okay, then we have this thing. This is by Percy Allen. It almost didn't make it here. I had to ask the staff at the Brattle if they would maybe put a protecting covering over this thing so that it would survive to get to home. I don't think it would have otherwise. This is called the life story of Edward de Vere as William Shakespeare. And you see, this is seen better days. The covering was mainly meant to save just the rest of the dust jacket, so that on the shelf I know what it is. But this is a life, you can't see him right there, but we'll be seeing him again, of Edward de Vere, who has been for a long time put forward as a candidate for the authors of the plays written by William Shakespeare, in heavy scare quotes. And this is a biography of him, but it's a biography of him with that in mind. It was with that in mind. Then we have, let's see here, Historic Doubts Respecting Shakespeare. And this is an older work. This is by Bishop Whately from 1853. So this is an older book. And the full title is Historic Doubts Respecting Shakespeare, Infidel Objections, Illustrating Infidel Objections Against the Bible. And most of this book, the huge majority of this book, is about the Bible, specifically as it reaches its narrative climax, Jesus in the New Testament. And the reason why it's Historic Doubts Reflecting Shakespeare is not because someone bound this wrong. This, of course, is not how this book looked. This was rebound. But rather because the author opens by making a very canny association, which is that if we can doubt historically that William Shakespeare of Stratford-on-Avon wrote the plays attributed to his name, then maybe we can doubt Jesus too. If we start to look at just complacently received historical documentation, or the lack thereof, with a squinting critical eye, well, then it won't just be Shakespeare that we do it for. The first part of this book, this is so old, the introduction is broken down to object of the present work, historic doubts respecting Christ equally applicable to Shakespeare, peculiar nature and tendency of modern infidelity, illustrated by the renowned work of Strauss on the life of Jesus, his imitators in this country, their inferiority and imperfections, order of points discussed, reason for selecting these points. This is going to be the weirdest Shakespeare-adjacent book that I read, but it makes a good point. In fact, it makes a better point than Whately wants. Because although I think there is ample reason to doubt that Shakespeare of Stratford-on-Avon, the grain merchant, actually wrote King Lear. I'm not talking about a lack of documentary evidence of people seeing him writing the manuscript. I'm talking about, do those two things line up? Do they line up? Does, in your wildest imagination, the person who wrote A Midsummer Night's Dream, could that person be the person of William Shakespeare in the historical record? I think, this is no snobbery, this is no elitism at all, but I think if you line the two up, your answer is no. No, absolutely not. This guy? No, he couldn't have written Coriolanus. No, he couldn't have done that. I don't know who did, but he couldn't have done it any more than his brother could have done it. But at least in that circumstance, we know that William Shakespeare of Stratford-on-Avon lived. We know that he lived. We know that people dealt with him. We know that people lived with him. We know that people took him to court. We know that he died. We know that he made a will and signed it, or had somebody sign it. And we don't know anything like that for Jesus at all. Jesus is attested, his reality in the world, ever having been in the world, is attested to only by religious documents that proclaim him as a divine being. Since there's no divine, since there are no supernatural beings, there are no goblins, then those documents are already incredibly suspect. That they may accidentally note something real from history is neither here nor there. They are not documents to the existence of a Judean preacher named Jesus. And if you remove them, you have literally nothing. Nothing at all. So, yeah, if you're going to raise questions about Shakespeare, although I don't know what Whately knows. I don't know how widely he's read. I don't know if he thinks that people who think that adherents of the Shakespeare authorship question are saying that William Shakespeare didn't exist, that he was just a pseudonym, just a straw man. No, I don't know of anyone who says that. Anyway, let's move on. We have another naked hardcover. This is by Charles Allen, and it is called Notes on the Bacon Shakespeare Question. And this is also old, although not as old. Yeah, this is from 1900. And it is further elaborations on the theory about the Shakespeare authorship controversy from the turn of the 20th century that was most strongly held. Edward de Vere was not most strongly held in the year 1900. Francis Bacon was. I think if there are obvious problems with the Earl of Oxford, there are even more obvious problems with Francis Bacon. But nevertheless, people latched onto Francis Bacon on the part of ciphers and hidden messages, codes, Bacon's obvious, well-known fondness for ciphers and codes, for the clandestine. People have latched onto that back when numerology was a lot bigger a thing than it is now. And this is, Alan wrote a book on this subject, I believe. And this is notes on. So it's an elaboration on that. I wonder if this will tell me. I wonder if this will tell me what his other book was. I feel certain that he did. Nope, it doesn't. All right. But anyway, we're going to move on here. We'll move on to the next one. This is by Edwin Reed, and it is called Bacon versus Shakespeare. Some of you keen-eyed viewers may be sensing the theme by now. This is from the Victorian era, I know. This is 1897. And this is, again, more towards the end of the 19th century, the turn to the 20th century, was the heyday of Bacon as the person who wrote the plays attributed to William Shakespeare. And this, I assume, is just going to trot that around the block. These are very old books on the subject. They are a couple of them canonical. It'd be pretty expensive, I would think, to assemble this library. If you were interested in the Shakespeare authorship controversy, you might want these 4 books, but you would be paying, I would imagine you'd be paying quite a bit for them online. But we're not done, because we also have this thing. This is by Alden Brooks, and it is called Will Shakespeare and the Dyers Hand. And this is a biography of, look at that, a biography of William Shakespeare, what we know of William Shakespeare, with an eye towards it being false, with an eye towards it not being, towards it being true, a true biography, but not the biography of an author of Hamlet. Then we have, this is by B.M. Ward. I believe we've seen this on this channel before, but my copy fell apart, so I'm glad to have another one. This is another biography of the Earl of Oxford. And once again, like all biographies of the Earl of Oxford, it is not really that. It really is a position paper. I mean, you'll get all of Oxford's biography in here, and all of his antecedents, and all of his time period. But it really, the point of this book is not a biography of the Earl of Oxford. It's a biography of the man who was secretly Shakespeare. There's a much more famous, best-selling, relatively new, it's 35 years old, by any other name, is a book that is also a biography of the Earl of Oxford, but this is its big intellectual predecessor, and also would set you back. This is a whole library of early texts on the Shakespeare authorship controversy that would probably be expensive to assemble online. I haven't checked, but then this next one was by George Greenwood, MP, and it is there a Shakespeare problem? Is there? Is there a Shakespeare problem? How is the MP going to go about this? Is he going to say there isn't one? And here's how we know. Let's look at his art. Let's look at his work. Let's look at his plays. Here are the surnames of 3 friends of his father, of William Shakespeare's father, from Stratford-on-Avon in Warwickshire. And why on earth, how on earth would any playwright working in London have known those, much less use them? And other things like that in terms of timing of the plays, dating of the plays. Or is he going to say that none of that matters? That there is, in fact, a Shakespeare problem? Then we have this thing here. This is bright silver. This is Eva Turner Clarke, and this is Hidden Allusions in Shakespeare's Plays. This is the silvery dust jacket here, where she goes through the plays of William Shakespeare, looking for things that he is talking about without actually coming out and talking about them. And that maybe the reason he isn't is because he was actually Francis Bacon or the Earl of Oxford. And I had a copy of this right here. But honestly, wouldn't you rather have this one? So I had a copy of this, just a naked hardcover, but I'd much prefer this. So I grabbed it. Let's see here. Then we have this. This is also by Eva Turner Clarke. This is The Man Who Was Shakespeare. Not to be confused with The Man Who Was Shakespeare from another author that we saw on the same subject. There have been about 5 books in the Shakespeare authorship controversy that were called The Man Who Was Shakespeare. And this is just one of them. I've read this author because I read this. I read the Hidden Illusions book. And boy, oh boy, I liked it quite a bit. She really knows her Shakespeare. But I don't think I've ever read this. So that's fantastic. And it looks like she's plunking for the Earl of Oxford rather than Francis Bacon or anybody else. Okay, let's move on here. We have Terry Jones, Who Murdered Chaucer. This is Terry Jones of Monty Python fame, but he also is joined by Chaucer scholars, Robert Yeager, Terry Dolan, Alan Fletcher, and Juliet Dorr. And this is a lovely book. It's heavy-duty paper because it's illustrated all throughout. And it looks at Chaucer's death. What little we know of it. We know very little about Chaucer's death. 1400. But we know that he wasn't alive after 1400. But there's no big pomp and circumstances funeral for an extremely well-known poet and courtier, an extremely well-known member at court. And also, there's no real tomb until afterwards. There's nothing that was erected by Chaucer's own people that we know of. And for a book that was as widely popular as the Canterbury Tales, we have almost nothing in the way of manuscripts. Almost like there was an attempt to eradicate it from history. And long before that attempt, there was also Chaucer's Apology. Worth remembering, people who read the Canterbury Tales, that it's worth remembering that Chaucer wrote and published a groveling, fulsome apology for the Canterbury Tales. Now, why did he do that? Well, Terry Jones and the scholars in this book posit a reason. They posit that he had an extremely powerful enemy at court who probably did kill him. Chaucer has an odd change of physical address very late in his life. Why was that? What was that? We don't know. The documentary evidence doesn't actually shed light on these things. It tells us about them, but it doesn't tell us the why of them. I read this when it first came to, I think this is an import. I read this when it first came out in, when were you? The early 2000s, yes? Yeah, 2004 is when the first U.S. edition came. And I read it in, I think, a big trade paperback. And I went into it very skeptical, thinking, well, who murdered Chaucer? You don't know who murdered Chaucer. You don't know if anybody did. There's no way for you to know. There's no way for you to even answer the question. And I liked it, fine, but I got rid of it. And then just recently on some booktube channel somewhere, I've been racking my brains trying to think of who it was. I saw this book in the background on their shelf. And I can't for the life of me remember who that was. But I saw it and thought, gee, I'd like to reread that. I think I went into it with a lot of attitude. I think there's a lot of just fun what-ifing going on here. And I'm a lot more flexible and amenable to that now than I was when I first read this. And I had that thought when I saw it in the background of somebody's video, and then I thought, the Brattle will provide. It's not a usual thing. You don't usually see it in used bookstores, but the Brattle will provide. Sooner or later, I will see it at the shop, and I did. So now I have it. I won't get rid of it again. Then I found a hardcover, or just a perfect condition copy of, this is Collins and LaPierre. This is Freedom at Midnight, about the liberation of India, the partitioning, the partition and the liberation of India. So it takes you all the way from the heyday of the Raj, from Lord Mountbatten, who's on the cover there, all the way to the assassination of Gandhi. And it's fantastic. Collins and LaPierre never wrote a bad book. When they collaborated, boy, oh boy, are they readable. And I have had copies of this over and over again. I always get rid of them. I always mail them away to somebody because people want to know, actually, the occasion when I have sent this away the most is not people asking about Indian independence or the partition. Really, the occasion when I've sent this out the most is people saying, I want a work of history that is fantastically readable. I don't even care what the subject is. I just want it to be fantastically readable. And this works for that. But so when I saw this at the shop, I could not, off the top of my head, imagine. I couldn't remember whether or not I had this, or whether or not I'm just in between copies. But it was like $1, so I grabbed it anyway, whether I have it or not. And I haven't checked to see if I do. Then we have a romance novel, one of the only pieces of fiction today. There's there's science fiction, and then there's Deanna Raybourn and Catherine Porter, or Catherine Mansfield, and then there's this, a romance novel. This is Lorraine Heath. This is Passions of a Wicked Earl in hardcover, which maybe this is a book club edition of some kind or other, but I remember really liking this book and really being surprised by it. It's the first book in a series. And it's about a young woman who is betrothed as a child to an older nobleman who doesn't want anything to do with her. He won't divorce her or anything, but he wants her well away from his townhouse in London. He wants to carry on with floozies and have nothing to do with her. And all of the settings for Passions of a Wicked Earl would have led a less adventurous, a less confident romance author to just take the easy way out, like 6 or 7 different kinds of easy ways out. And instead, that doesn't happen at all in this book. The last 50 pages of this book will baffle an ordinary romance reader. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. So if I had seen this as a cheap mass market paperback, I would have grabbed it anyway. But a hardcover? Well worth a reread. I will gladly reread it. I don't know that it bumps Wandle the Water. I don't know that anything could bump this book, but I might go on the pile for tonight as well. Then we have, I wish I'd found this with a dust jacket, but I'll take it anyway, because it's a classic of its kind. This is by Richard Paris, and this is King George III and the Politicians. This is a series of lectures getting down deep into the weeds of King George III's ruling. This gets referenced all the time in broader works about King George III. But here it is, the book itself, the lectures themselves. And I love it. I no offense to Kenneth Roberts, who wrote a really, really readable biography of George III. But I really think that George III is best served, biographically speaking, by splinter subjects. King George and the mad business, King George and the politicians, King George and whatever, rather than sweeping big biographies. So I'm very, very happy to find this, even without a dust jacket. And finally, this thing here. This is Robert Smithson and the Elizabethan Country House. And it's by Mark Gerard, who did the definitive work on the English country house, just in general. Here, it's just the Elizabethans. I'll read anything by this guy. Yeah, you get architectural diagrams, you get floor plans, you get paintings of or photographs of the buildings as they are now or as they were then. I will take anything by this guy. He wrote 5 or 6 books on country houses. They're all great, and I've never seen this one before, except in lists of by the same author or in bibliographies, but I've never seen a copy of it that I could actually have, and that's great. I want it very much so. So there you go. That was my big restorative Brattle bookstore visit. I really needed this. I needed this visit to go well, and it did. So maybe you spotted a theme, maybe not. But anyway, that was my trip to the Brattle. I wasn't actually going to go on a Saturday. But I was shirtless Skyping with Christopher Russell, and he said that if I didn't go on a Saturday, I was extremely soy. I didn't want to be extremely soy, so I went. And I'm glad I did. Because my next opportunity would have been Monday, and Monday's going to be close to 100 degrees Fahrenheit here in Boston, which is all right by me, but it might not be all right by my body. It's probably not a good idea to go schlepping out into the world and lug around 100 pounds of books in 100-degree heat. And after the peak of heat on Monday, it looks like we have days and days of rain. And as if you're not familiar with the Brattle, you think back to my description. There's a sale lot next door to the building. Well, it's open to the elements. So if it's raining or snowing, then the cars get tarped over and put back in the shop. So I don't have a sale lot to wander around in, and I kind of like that. So I tend not to go to the Brattle in inclement weather. So I might not be back next week. This is worth it, though. This is very, very much worth it. I got, well, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 books on the Shakespeare authorship controversy. 9 of them. And instead of paying $35 each, I paid $1 a piece. So I paid less for these books. This increases my library on this subject by 1/3. And I paid less for all of these together than I would have paid for postage alone for getting even half of them online. So very happy about that. Always happy when the sale lot bends over backward to accommodate me. So, and there were no soiling incidents. So there you go, a successful return to form for the Brattle. So I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.